Thank you for joining us today at Miniature Wargaming Labs. Today, I'll be showing you how I painted this wall section from Games Workshop for Necromunda. You can find these in a lot of the Dark Uprising and the Hive War starter box. But this will be an example of how I painted it. And for this, you're going to need to prime it in Chaos Black. For the paints, I used P3 Menoth White Base, Citadel's Pallid Witchflesh, Citadel's Leadbelcher, Army Painter's Weapon Bronze, Army Painter's Matte Black, Citadel Dryad Bark, Citadel's Trollslayer Orange, Citadel's The Fang, Citadel's Reichland Sepia Wash, and to finish off with the lights, I used Citadel's Yriel Yellow and Vallejo Flat Yellow with a little bit of the Pallid Witchflesh to give it some shine there. Alright, let's go ahead and get started on this thing. So to start with the wall unit, you can see I primed it black. Here, we're going to take the top and we'll set that to the side. We're going to focus on the actual wall itself. So where we're going to start is I want to move these little bits to white, but since there's black in the way, I'm going to take some Menoth white base. Another good option would just be Army Painter Ash Gray, something that's got a lot of pigment to it, and that can, you can basically put your white on top of. Because white on black, you're going to need a lot of layers. So, and with this, I don't need to be gentle. So I'm just going to take a brush I've beat to heck, dampen it up a little bit, and I'm just going to go like that. And I do this in an assembly line approach, so I get a whole bunch of wall units together at once, and I just go one color down, and we'll flip, and we'll flip, and just mushing the paint in there. Don't have to be neat. We'll keep going around. Now that that's dry, we're going to take some Pallid Witchflesh and we're going to cover over that. The Pallid Witchflesh is going to be our white. We're going to do the same thing. Take our messed up brush and just start pushing them in. Now that the white is dry, we're going to take some Leadbelcher and I am just going to touch certain parts up. So I want to get these rings here to kind of frame the white. So these little metal riveted bands. Then I'm not too worried about being neat on the bolts. I'm going to grab both of those. And I'll get, there's a little light up here. So get all the metal pieces on the light. Now, what I like about these walls is they're actually chipped and shot up. So I'll go ahead and do some of those chips. You also have the side of the walls here, they have these little bolts. I like to just put a little swirl in there. Now, if I hit the edge like that, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to say that's scoring that came from whenever someone was taking the panel off. I want to make sure to get this inside edge of the banding, like that. And we'll go ahead, go around and finish this thing off. Since we have the Leadbelcher on the wall, let's start putting it on the roof tiling. I'll use a similar technique. Get these little dots in here. Get some of these dings. And as much of the piping as you want. Now something we have here is the little plate, and for that I'm going to use Army Painter Weapon Bronze. And throughout these Zone Mortalis walls you'll see little examples of these little plates everywhere. And if you want, you can punch up some of the stuff in here by adding a little different color. Now I have taken some matte black from Army Painter. Abaddon black will also work. And I'm going to tidy up the black edges. So you can see it's a little sloppy on it before. And now we'll just go around and clean up. Now we're at the point of where we have what I would call a brand new wall section in our Zone Mortalis. Everything's nice, neat, clean. So now we're going to start dirtying it up, the corrosion bit. So I'm going to take some Dryad bark, and I've got a Games Workshop dry brush that's starting to fray and beat to hell. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of paint on it, and I get a piece of paper off screen, and I'm going to rub a lot of that paint off. And then I'm just going to start mussing up. And if you dry brush it like that, you can actually get some of the texture from the wall pits. Really like the wall pitting that they put in to the model. And don't worry about if you get it on the Leadbelcher or some of the other metal pieces. Now if you wet your brush and try to do this, it'll start seeping in there and you'll get like this moist look like that. So this is just a light wetting. And it's up to personal taste how much of this you want to do to your... I like to put a lot of the brown down at the bottom to make it look like water's coming around there. So I do these in the production line, so it goes a little faster. And don't forget, we can do the same thing to the top here. Looks a little shiny. So we'll just get some dirty bits on there. Alright. Now I've got some dirt on there. I want to add some rust effects. And for that, I am going to use Troll Slayer Orange. Another good option is Army Painter's Rust Orange. It's pretty much the same color. For that, I'm going to take my tool. Doesn't matter if it's clean or not, because I'm going to make a dirty wall. Then I'm going to take off some orange, and I'm going to get this wet. And what I want to do is make kind of a glaze. I'm going to add more water, just by little pieces. I don't want to turn it into a wash. So you can see as I mix it up, it's thinning down. The consistency I want is I take my tool and I push it up the side. I want to see how viscous it is when it runs back down. I want a little bit more runny. That should do it. Now, I am going to take a brush that I've beaten to heck. And what I'm going to do is just one of these bits. No point putting it on the black wall. If it runs in the black, I'm not going to care. So it's kind of like, glazes are kind of like working with contrast paints. Just want to make sure to push it into the edges. Now I will take a smaller beat up brush and I'll just dot the little bolts. And any of these dings if I want. Now, don't forget to do the roof section too. So what we notice about the Zone Mortalis wall is there's actually a lot of details. And the way I painted it, a lot of it's black on black. So I want that to pop out a little bit. So I'm going to use the Fang and a dry brush. In particular, for this I like to use Army Painter's dry brush. So get a little bit of paint on there, and then I've got a little piece of paper off camera, and there I'm just going to hit the edges of the wall. You can also go like that. Normally I do this before I put the orange on, but I forgot. So you can see now if you want like little light streaks, you can go down like that and put some little texture on the wall itself. So it's subtle, but it's there. Now I want to tone down the orange and give this more of a patina look, like long neglect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Seraphim Sepia Shade Wash. I use this on all my Necromunda, and I've got a brush that I've beaten to heck. So I'm going to wet that brush a little bit. And so now I'm just going to push this in here. I don't care if it hits the black or runs anywhere. I want to make sure to push it into these edges and corners where it would naturally run. So we're actually getting pretty close to the end here. For most, I would actually just stop here, but I want to do some final touches. So you can see here I started off with the Pallid Witch Flesh White, and I roughed it up and toned it down. But I want to make it look like the corrosion's bubbling up from underneath, coming through the white. So I'm going to put a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh White on these. And we've got to shake that up. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll take a brush that I've messed up before, get a little bit of paint on it, and then I'll rub most of the paint off. And I'm using a little brush for this section, and what I'm doing is I spin the brush and just tap it where I want. See, like that. And that'll brighten up some of the wall. Alright, so do that again. Get most of the paint off. And since I'm doing it in little batches, what I can do is actually put one layer of this white stippled on, and then maybe just a little bit more white to show where less paint's chipped off. Now I'm going to have a lot of these objects in the wall that I don't want to get the white on. So I'm going to use the little brush to get around those. I'm not going to worry if I hit it either. I might even actually go like that to add a little bit of interest to some of the raised edges. But what I'm primarily going to use is this dry brush. And this will get the job done quick. Get a little bit of paint, rub it off. And let's say I'll leave, and I'll change with every wall panel to make them look unique, but I won't touch that corner. I'll say that's got a lot of corrosion to it. Let me just start building up our white until we're happy. And when you see me spinning the brush, and that's to prevent getting a lot of symmetry in the corrosion, to make it look like, oh, he stippled it on. And you can do this to taste. So I could actually just stop right there. I'll keep going a little bit more. Like I said, I can always hit just the lightest of touches, and that'll make the wall pop a little bit more. This is a good chance to let some of this indents in the plastic that comes from the molding process. This will really bring those out. There. And that looks good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm also going to use the Pallid Witch Flesh. So I have these lights up top here, and where's another example? Something like that. So I'm going to actually make those lights turn on, and I'm going to use yellow, because that's what exists on some of my other Necromunda terrain. So I'm going to base it white so that the yellow has something to stick to. And just a little something in the middle there. And we'll go around and run some white down where the little tubes would be. And since I'm doing this in an assembly production fashion, I've got a whole bunch of walls next to me. And we'll go ahead and get those done. For the next step, I'm going to start on the light, and I'm going to use some Yriel yellow. So I'm going to take my brush here, and I'm just going to fill in over the white. Actually, I'm going to spill over some of the areas I had in white just to get that glow effect. So the areas that I painted white will show Yriel yellow differently. At this point, I'm going to use some Vallejo flat yellow, and I've already poured some out into my palette here. I'm just going to take my brush and starting at the middle, actually just starting right here, I'm just going to run a bead through the little recessed areas there. Want that to sink in. Now let me show you something with the little lights right here. What I do with these is I take the paint on there and I jam it into the space, and then I take my finger and I rub that off. And I'll touch up that yellow. Actually, that kind of works there. Looks like a little glow on the bottom. Happy accident. Alright. And then this will take a little second to dry. Now for the final step, I'm going to take some of my Pallid witch flesh here. Just going to need a little bit. And I'm just going to run a little highlight right down a little light source there. Just kind of give it a little sheen. And once again, like on this side, just little dabs of white in there. And then rub it off. Now I can still see the metal. Alright, so there is my little wall section for my Necromunda games. Looks tabletop ready. Thank you for joining us at Miniature Wargaming Labs, and we'll see you next time.